Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Glad you could join me on our weekly, and sometimes even more frequently, visit into the fields and forests with good friends and great dogs. That's why we're here. And speaking of dogs, have I got a treat for you. Senior NAVHDA Judge Ruth Weiss will be joining us. She'll talk about all things versatile dog, including how to handle your dog better in a hunt test and how that translates to the field and the forest. She'll also have some great hunting stories for us, and we'll particularly focus on steadiness and retrieving in our training questions. So if you need help with any of that, she's the one to go to, and I've got her this week on the podcast. Our Fix It segment this week, I will argue against using praise, but only in this one instant. And then I went to the social media and asked everybody what bird species they hunted the most last season. I'll have the answer for you. It might surprise you. Of course, you get a chance to win that 4-pack of pointer shotguns in the Fur Feathers Friends sweepstakes. And there's a monthly prize. This month, it is a Sage and Breaker gun care range bag and a high-vis sight. All of it, of course, made possible by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock choke tubes, Purina Pro Plan Sport dog food, Sage and Breaker gun care products, Roughland dog kennels, pointer shotguns, and high-vis sights. Well, around here, some related home improvement projects that definitely needed done. In fact, when we moved in here 20 years ago, the garden shed, which has since turned into my training gear storage location, it needed a roof then. I finally got around to it last weekend and have the bruises to prove it. At least I didn't roll off and land on the ground. Lots of supervision from Flick. I guess that goes to show you how interested he is in that kind of thing, the training part of it at least. And he was also probably just being a nudge a little bit, because I ended up having to kind of rebuild a little bit of his training table as well. Yeah, it's even older. So did a little bit of refurbishing there, and it helped out a lot. It's astounding how long a high quality plywood will last in the conditions we have in terms of weather here. But did it. And if you haven't built your training table yet, yeah, take a look. There's lots of plans online, and make it simple. Mine is really simple. 2 sawhorses, a 4x8 piece of plywood, ripped down the middle. One half become 2 ramps. The other half is the top. A few gate hinges, and you're in business. And you, very interested, always looking ahead and always looking for inspiration. If you get nothing else out of it, that's what you'll get out of our social media discussion this week. What bird species did you hunt most often last season? All right, here's kind of pardon the pun, a mixed bag. According to Travis Hampton, he hunted chukars and huns. Yep. More and more we're seeing that. I'll tell you, I got a great story from a guy I met in Montana last year. We hit it off, and he finally came out west and hunted chukars for the first time. It worked, and more power to you. Eric Kopang, Bob White, finally had a good year. I want to know where that was, Eric. Found Gamble's quails, says Lance Larson. George Cummins, I know where you go for all those pheasants. Ducks for Jeff Patrizzi. Yeah, groovy. Kyle Broadfoot, Sharpies. Yeah, I wish I could say that. Dusky grouse for Mike. Well, of course, Michael Salamone. Yeah, you're up there in the Rockies. I get it. Jack Snipe for Harry Hill. Huns for Dennis Bohannon. Joe Rundell, ruffed grouse, and woodcock. Hands down, he says. Now, if I could hit a few more, I would feel a little better. Well, get your hands up, Joe. And Dove and Gamble's quail for Scott Andrew. You know, I've never quite gotten into that dove thing. I do remember we had one chance at the old place. The doves were coming over, and it was pretty good year for me too, I guess. Went out, got permission to hunt doves in the field next door to our field, and hunkered down, kind of hid myself in a few places, brought out one box of shells and emptied that box and brought home one dove. Can you relate? Oh, thank you for all your comments on social media, even the ones I don't get to on the podcast. They're enlightening, and I do read them all. That portion of the program brought to you by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. Learn more at midvalleyclays.com. Take a look at their assortment of sub-gauge shotguns. Yeah, Dave Fiedler, the proprietor there, calls it Sub-Gauge Central for a good reason. They've always got a whole bunch of 20s, 28s, and 410s in stock. And if they don't have it, they can probably get it. In fact, if you're looking for something very specific, Dave's got a line on all of those manufacturers, and he can get it when, well, most people can't. Again, take a look at their assortment of sub-gauge guns at midvalleyclays.com. Give him a call. Talk to Dave Fiedler. Tell him I sent you. And I'm still feeding Flick. Of course, I'm still feeding him. Still feeding him as I do during the season, just a little bit less. Pro Plan Sport performance dog food. They've got a lot of formulations, so depending on what you're looking for your dog's optimum health, you'll find something at proplansport.com. My particular needs are that it become 100% complete and balanced nutrition, and that it has the right proportion of protein and fat, and that's what Pro Plan Sport has. 30% protein, 20% fat. Yeah, the folks at Purina have done a lot of research on this, and that seems to be the right balance. Learn more about all their formulations and why it does so well for Flick and all my other dogs at proplansport.com. Well, I'm so inspired when I talk with her, and I've had the chance to walk alongside as she's judged a few times at a NAVHDA event or two. Maybe she even judged a dog of mine. I don't know. Ruth Weiss, welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
You know, you're such an upbeat optimist, and I guess that probably helps you when you're judging a NAVHDA test, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It just makes things much smoother when usually the person in charge has an easygoing attitude about the day.
Yeah, and you know, I've been grateful over the years, and you know all these people, from Phil Swain to Emil Roethlisberger, all these folks who, and God bless you all, it's all volunteers, everybody who's listening, and they come out and they walk, I'm afraid to guess, miles and miles doing the tests all day, usually a 3-day weekend. Ruth, have you ever figured out how many steps or how many miles you walk in a 3-day test?
Well, I've talked to other people because I'm not a step counter per se. I've always said that if my clothes fit, that I'm walking enough. And so I don't worry about how much I weigh or how many steps I take as long as my clothes fit.
Yeah.
But somebody has said that we go between 10 and 15 miles a day.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
You have a full day, and let's just pretend it's a utility test. That's probably 8 dogs, maybe 9 on a good or a bad day, depending on how you look at this stuff. That is a lot of walking. And
yeah.
And on top of that, and I'm getting back to your optimism and that sort of thing. Most of you, and the ones I named and many that I haven't named, they're all in it to win it. In other words, they want you to do a good job when you're running your dog in a test. And that is so different than the other testing and dog game opportunities out there. How do you think that evolved? Is it part of the NAVHDA ethos, or is it just that we're dog people and we like other dog people?
Well, I think the original intent of the testing was to be a test and not a competition.
Yeah.
And so the people who started NAVHDA sort of played off that German system, thanks to Bodo and others who had that basis already. And so we've always, or at least I have always prided myself on the fact that we're not competing with each other, so that we can encourage each other to do well, and it doesn't hurt us, the other person doing well. So it's just very beneficial to everybody involved, and that's why NAVHDA tests are so warm and welcoming, because everybody is just there to help everybody else do good.
Absolutely true. And so, we could talk all day about that, but I want to talk about some other important stuff as well. But anybody out there who's really interested in learning about the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association, easy to find info at NAVHDA.org. Ruth, let's get down to the critical question. How was your bird hunting season?
Well, last season wasn't the best for us. My husband got sick and everything was cut short. And when we did get to Arizona for our month of December, it was a very poor season, mainly because of scenting conditions, I believe. So it was not a good hunting year for us. We didn't get the opportunity to get out, and we didn't get out with our dogs. And so Greg's got surgery scheduled for the end of May, and hopefully we're back at it this fall.
Well, that's a shame. I think it was probably a good year to kind of lay back a little bit. I didn't hear a lot of good reports out of Arizona. Did you?
Well, we were there for the month of December, and we hunted, and we found birds, and we've been going there so long, we can always find birds even in bad years. What for Mearns specifically, what many of us thought was going on was it was so hot and dry that even the experienced dogs were having difficulty locating birds. And so puppies had no chance. I mean, we hunted desert quail, we hunted scalies and gambles, and there were plenty of those to be found, but our delightful Mearns were pretty elusive.
You're probably as qualified as anybody out there beyond a veterinary surgeon to speculate on what makes those conditions so tough on a dog. Is it the lack of humidity? Is it the lack of air? What causes a rough scenting situation?
Dry.
Yeah.
That was brought home to me one time when I judged a test in Canada where it rained the whole day, and we did tracks for puppies.
Yeah,
10 puppies. All puppies in the pouring rain got 4s in tracking. So it only reinforced the fact that moisture is scent's best friend, and with no moisture, it's just very, very difficult.
It's funny. I would think I would agree with. By the way, a 4 is the top score in a NAVHDA test. So everybody out there, that's a really good score. But you think about what happens to in the rain. It what do they call that? It turns the scent molecules into. It spreads them a little bit more, or maybe it amplifies because it's wet. The opposite, of course, makes all the sense in the world. That must have been tough. But let's go back to say a great season you had down in Arizona, because I'm still, and I threatened off Mike to come down there and stalk you. But what is it about Arizona hunting, especially that Mearns quail, that is so unique and so attractive to bird hunters?
Well, we call it magical, and it's a combination of things. It's a combination of the beauty of the land, the beauty of the bird itself, and how elusive they are, and how it takes a long time to figure them out and to get really good at finding them. And your dogs, I guess the main beauty that most people love about Mearns is they usually hold for a pointing dog. So you get good points on Mearns quail. which is very helpful. You know, your dogs are not of huge use to you with running birds, or at least not without a lot of practice.
Yeah, we're still working on that. Always will be. You know, but it's a different kind of country. I don't care if you're a pheasant hunter, a rough grouse hunter, or anything else. Mearns country is way different. You know, it's hilly, but it's not Chucker hilly. But what else? Why don't you describe typical Mearns quail country for us?
Well, it's rolling hills, many times with oaks, junipers, rocky. The sky can be just blue, 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 and everything else is green, green, green.
Yeah.
And just trees and shade and just huge, vast expanses of places to hunt with usually very little contact with other people or other hunters. It's just you have to experience it. It's just our happy place.
Yeah.
And we just love it there.
I've almost been to Sonoyta a couple times, never been to Patagonia down there, but that's the general region most people look at down there. But, you know, it's the middle of nowhere, isn't it?
It is. And that's one of the beauties of it. We usually stay on Empire Ranch, which is a very old cattle ranch where they film movies and still, it's a foundation now. And, it's just very remote and quiet and disconnected.
Yeah. In fact, the one time I was almost ready to pull the trigger on a trip, the first thing I learned is, well, in most places, you'll never get a cell phone signal.
Correct. I love it. It's great.
and you can stay on any of the high spots. If you look south, you're looking at Mexico most of the time, aren't you?
Many times, yes. Yep.
Well, that's got
it's right there.
It's got its own charm, such as it is. Let's go down the path toward excellence in our dogs and their skills, and are helping them with that. If I recall, last time I looked, you've handled at least 74 NAVHDA dogs. Out of all of those, you've actually passed the invitational test a couple times, and that is, folks, if you don't know what that looks like, go to my YouTube channel, watch the episode I did on that. But in all of that, you're teaching, of course, the dog, but you're also learning from the dog and from what you're trying to accomplish. Let's start with that. What have you learned handling 74 dogs in NAVHDA tests?
I just told this to someone the other day. You don't die of embarrassment.
Yeah. I
made every mistake there is to make running dogs. And really, nobody else cares very much about what your dog does on a particular day. So even if you just, have a terrible day and it's just an awful score and whatever, most people just really don't care. Yeah. And it's you, or maybe you and the owner or the breeder that cares about that dog score. And, I've made every mistake there is.
Oh, God, except this one.
Probably more to come.
I made the mistake so many people, I've tried to counsel so many people on since, and that is, I never read the test rules and aims before I went and took my first wire hair to his first NAVHDA test, and forgot all about the confirmation portion of the test, where everybody's listening. The judges generally, right after they come out of the water, so they can take a look at the code and things like that, they're counting the number of teeth, how the bite is, they're looking at the eyes, they're looking at the code, and then on male dogs, they're making sure those dogs do or do not have testicles. And there's only one way to do that, and that's to reach in and count them. Well, my dog hadn't been trained for that particular aspect of the test, and boy, was it a rodeo.
He must have been quite surprised.
Oh, he and me both. Well, we survived, and like you said, embarrassment is not a fatal affliction, and thank goodness for that. The other thing that I observed, and it worked for me, and I'm sure it's probably been part of your observations as well, and that is, when it comes to test day, it's too late. If you haven't got it figured out, you may as well loosen up, have some fun.
Right, and the dogs sense it.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and did you ever judge with Emil Roethlisberger?
Yep. Yep. Apprenticed and judged. Yeah.
Wow. Well, he was a treasure and a little bit of a rascal.
So I've heard.
He pulled one on me on a natural ability test, and I won't go into that, but if we ever get together down in Patagonia somewhere, I'll tell you that story over a beer.
Well, he dragged me as an apprentice. He dragged me into the cover when we dragged a bird, and he purposely walked into the marshy area with his waders on, and me in my tennis shoes or whatever I happen to be wearing, up to my knees in mud. Yeah,
I feel better now.
Yeah.
So hey, everybody, that's what happens at NAVHDA test. We have some fun, and it shows, and everybody who's loosened up is going to live to tell about it. Back to some of your observations as a judge, though, and I don't mean to focus just on hunt tests, but hunt tests are essentially a distillation of what we're going to be doing all season in the field anyway, whether it's what the dog is exhibiting or what we handlers are exhibiting. Boy, I got another one for you, but I'll save it. What do you see out there in the way of people handling dogs that the rest of us might want to do more of? Seen any real positive, inspirational tricks of the trade?
A lot of people are working on obedience, and I like a balance between obedience and that wild, crazy bird dog.
Yeah.
And I always used to be in favor of having the wild, crazy bird dog, but I'm leaning more towards some more obedience, and which builds the bond between the dog and the hunter trainer.
Yeah. And
it helps in the field so that there's a deeper trust between the dog and the handler with more obedience.
I love that description. You're absolutely right. And it manifests itself in so many ways, but the idea that you can build a relationship and it's built on successes,
Correct.
In fact, successive successes. Now that I think about it, as you add steps to your training, it sounds like you got a dog that agrees with you as well in there.
Well, it's been working pretty well.
Yeah. What kind of dogs you running?
Well, at the moment we've got 4 poodle pointers, 2 wire hairs, and a Griffon.
Well, you got good taste in coats.
I do like my very fuzzy, wiry dog. So,
oh my! Maybe we'll get around to care of the coats down the road in the second half of the podcast. Let's go back to the testing and evaluation part again, because the opposite of what you like to see out there, obedience and how that works. They're probably. And I'm sorry, your eyes are sore by the end of the day from rolling so much, or face plants, or face palms. What are some of the biggest goofs we make when we're testing a dog?
The number one mistake that people make is heeling. And they think since their dog heels like walking around the park, around the house or whatever, that, oh, my dog heels, I don't have to work on that.
Yeah.
And both at the utility level and the invitational level. At the utility level, you're allowed to use a leash, and there are no heeling stakes left anymore to worry about. So you need to heel your dog for 50 yards near the water, usually past some decoys or whatever. And people just think that their dog can do it, and they don't train for it. I've seen so many dogs miss a prize one because their healing was so bad.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah, and by the way, this is the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. That's Ruth Weiss, senior judge for the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association, who's also tested successfully at least twice in the Invitational. It's funny, again, that harkens back to what you just talked about, though. Healing. Okay, who cares about healing? We got a hunting dog. He's supposed to be running around out there. But that's part of that obedience thing, isn't it?
Correct. And, we're simulating sneaking up to a pond to jump shoot a duck or walking into your blind in the dark. And so it is critical that your dog can heal at certain times. It's important that your dog can be touched by other people because your vet needs to touch your dog and things like that. So it's very important, that basic obedience stuff. It really plays out during testing and hunting.
Yeah, in fact, I always say a friend will hold your dog's leash. A really good friend will hold your dog when you're pulling porcupine quills.
So I've heard.
Yeah, I've tested that theory. So far, so good. What are you working on with that many dogs? You're probably working on everything all the time, but is there something you're focusing on this summer with all of them or some of them?
Everybody's going to be force fetched this summer.
Wow.
So we're going to have a good retrieve. I've got client dogs coming in. June and July is force fetch months. So all of mine, I've got some younger dogs, 3 or 4 younger dogs, and they will all be retrieving by fall.
Well, if I said that, I wouldn't be quite as assured as you are, but I'm sure that will be the case with you. And, again, and there are some people, and I've gone the whole gamut on this. I believe in the force fetch, or what some people call the conditioned retrieve or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's not as ugly as it used to be, but there's still some stress involved in all of that. Which a lot of people will tell you they come out of bonded more closely with their dog, which is one thing. Would you agree?
Many times that's true. For some dogs, it's not, and that's why there's a variety of approaches to retriever training.
Yeah.
I just prefer. I want mine really reliable, and I want them to have no clue that there's any option other than to retrieve when I tell them. And so I've changed. And when I first started, I was 1 month retriever trained, done. Yeah. And I don't do that stuff anymore. And so I've got all summer. I'm going to take all summer. All my dogs will be retrieving happily, and not because they're afraid of me.
Okay, well, I can't just leave it at that. Tell me, I don't want the blow-by-blow description, because then you'd probably send me an invoice. But how do you make that happen? What's the overarching approach you use to end up with happily retrieving dogs?
Here's the thing, and it took me a long, long time to figure this out. I do a very long hold and carry.
Yeah.
So hold and carry for a month.
Okay.
And with no pressure, or very little. It's usually pretty positive stuff. And when I know that they know what hold and carry is, because I've been doing it for a month, then I use pressure to reinforce the disobedience of either not picking it up or whatever, not carrying it, whatever. But it's a very long hold and carry, so that I absolutely know they know what the job is. You know
Jeff Funky, I'm sure.
Sure.
Jeff reminded me a while back that, by the way, Jeff's he's a guy who he sells me his second best dogs. Unless he loses the coin flip, which is the case with my current dog. But Jeff reminded me once that, most self-respecting bird dogs will run out and pick something up.
Mm-hmm.
It's the second half of that equation that we need to work on. Is that where you're using the pressure?
Mainly, or sometimes just picking something up off the ground, whether it's the bumper or the bird.
Yeah.
A lot of dogs don't like to. They'll go run out and pick something up, but
Yeah.
I want to do drills and make sure that they'll pick up anything, anytime.
Yeah.
And so it's usually starts close with pressure,
Yeah.
and then builds so that they will go 20 or 30 or 40 yards to pick up something out at a distance and come back.
Okay, so let's not dance around the bush anymore. Define pressure for us.
Up ear pinch.
Yeah.
Which transfers to e-collar.
And the objective of both of those is to do what?
Well, to negatively reinforce when they do something wrong, which is refuse to pick something up.
So let's go back up a step or two, and thank you, Bob West, for reminding me of this just a few days ago. What is the step or two before that? At some point, you have to show them. Maybe that's what I should be doing, demonstrating. Open your mouth and put this bumper in it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, how do you do that part?
That's just hold and carry. So I start on the table, and I'll open their mouth and put in, I usually use 3 different objects. I'll use a dowel, I'll use a rubber dummy, and a canvas dummy.
Yeah.
And I just let them hold it.
Yeah.
And usually that's only a couple of days before they're just holding it without me having to hold their mouth shut. And then it's a quick from holding it to walking with it. And then I do that whole month of just hold and walk and hold and walk. And then that's when I move on to the pickup.
Yeah.
You've got to pick it up. And that's where some dogs don't want to do that, pick up off the ground.
Yeah, I get it. But if you've spent a month reminding them that take 3, not reminding them of the steps, but reminding them that you got to do that. Now,
right.
Now you have to walk a couple steps to do that.
Right.
It makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. And they're walking with me. They're walking with me around the ranch with something holding in their mouth.
Yeah.
I absolutely know. They know I want them to hold and carry something.
Yeah. Do you use a different command for hold than for retrieving?
I use fetch for everything.
Yeah. One command. Ultimately, it becomes the whole act. Run out, pick it up, bring it all the way back, hold it until I tell you to do something else.
Right.
Great. Wow, that's refreshing and fascinating. And you've probably seen this in a million different examples, but every dog learns at a different pace. And something as complicated as this, that is as critical as this is, they got to know it inside and out. And a month on hold and carry doesn't strike me as unreasonable.
Yeah, it's worked for me for the last few years, and it's definitely more pleasurable for me, and it's more pleasurable for the dog, and I end up with the happy dog at the end of it, rather than the dog that's shaking in its boots and quaking because I'm going to shock the heck out of it if it doesn't do it.
Yeah. Let's conclude the retrieving portion of our discussion with one thing, and I really think you talk about having a happy dog at the end of the transaction. How do you ensure that? What happens when the dog arrives and stands or sits in front of you, and then at some point you're going to reach down and tell that dog to give you the bird? Mm-hmm. Now what?
Depends on the dog.
Yeah.
So I figure out what that dog loves the most.
Yeah.
So for some dogs, it might be run down to the pond and swim. It might be run down to the field and run. It might be go in the play yard with their buddy. But every time we finish force fetch training, I let them do the thing they love. And so they quickly, the smart ones quickly learn that if I do what she wants, I get to do what I want. And it's worked very well. It's the figuring out what the dog loves more than anything to reward them with after the work.
Man, that is so inspiring. And I got to tell you, I used to belabor this point with everybody I would work with at our NAVHDA training days. Watch your dog. Do you know what your dog is thinking now? Do you think you know what your dog? That's part and parcel to what you're talking about. We need to know our dogs better than most of us know our dogs. Would you agree?
Pay attention. Yeah. Pay attention.
Yeah. Well, good. I think I'm on the right track. Another 5 dogs and I might figure it out someday. This is the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. That's Ruth Weiss, senior judge for NAVHDA, hunter and dog handler. You got long story. We'll carry that forward to the second half of the podcast after a quick break. And let me remind you, when we come back, as well as more with Ruth, we've got our Fix It segment. There's one suggestion I'll make about when not to praise your dog. And then our word of the week and the Fur Feathers Friends sweepstakes, among other things. So stick around for all of that right after this word from TrulockChokes.com. It's hard to find American-made anything. It's hard to find well-made anything. And it's hard to find products that have an unconditional lifetime warranty and satisfaction guarantee until you go to TrulockChokes.com. These guys are still making every single choke right there in Wiggum, Georgia, out of American steel with the tightest tolerances in the industry on state-of-the-art equipment. If you're looking to upgrade your shooting and your shotgun, and maybe put another bird in the bag every once in a while, check out TrulockChokes.com, TRULOCK, chokes.com. And when you're traveling like we do, whether it's to Arizona or to Montana or let's see where else, Southern California, Nevada. Oh, I got 1 or 2 others on the list this year. Flick is riding in a Roughland kennel. Safe, affordable, part of the ultimate travel system that includes dog bowls, storage trays, water storage of all sorts, including some spill-proof versions of, those kind of stand up and lay down things. They call it the water hole, and boy, it works. You name it, they've got it when it comes to traveling with your dog. Learn more about them at Roughland Kennels, RUFF, roughlandkennels.com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. Senior Judge Ruth Weiss, where are you standing and talking to us from today?
I'm standing in the corner of the kennel where I have a phone signal, looking out over the green hills covered with foxtails and weeds that we're currently trying to cut.
Oh, good luck.
About my half-acre pond and just green hills.
Well, number one, I'm grateful you have a cell phone signal first. I don't envy you the weed aspect of that, but you also have what most of us would kill for, especially in the NAVHDA training world, and that is water.
Yes.
We see this all the time. I've been to 50 NAVHDA tests. And all I do is help out. I don't do anything important. But most of the people who come for a natural ability test have really not done near enough water work, if they've done any. Is that just my gut feel, or is that what you see?
We see it very often. People think that, my dog swims in the swimming pool at home, that they're going to go in a muddy pond.
Yeah.
Which I guarantee you is not often the case. And people just assume that if their dog swims in one place, they'll swim in any place, which is often not the case. Some people just don't prepare enough in enough places with their dog swimming.
I may be the only wire hair owner who's, I've owned 5 wire hairs and none of them want to get their feet wet, let alone the rest of their body. Have you got any suggestions for some of us who maybe have a 10-week, 11-week-old puppy in introducing them to water? There's I've heard every trick in the book, but what works for you?
Well, my favorite way is to find a stream that they can easily wade across.
Yeah.
And I cross to the other side and just encourage them to follow me.
Mm-hmm.
And once they're crossing, then I'll walk up or down the stream so that they have to walk through the water and in the water. And usually it's rough and tumble because you've got a litter of puppies and it's just like whatever. It's just irrelevant that it's water because they're just happy, joyful puppies and they don't care. And then I always try to start with playing with bumpers with my puppies early because that's what you're given to use to entice your dog into the water at the NA test.
Yeah.
And if your dog has no affinity for bumpers, then there's really not a reason to go in the water for some dogs. So playing with a bumper, walking them around water, and then I expose them to dogs who love water. And I get them to play with the dogs who just run and jump and play in the water.
Yeah.
And for the most part, my pups swim. I've got one right now who has no love of the water, but she'll go in and she'll certainly go in for a bird.
Yeah.
She just doesn't choose to hang out at the water. She'd rather go hunting.
Yeah. Yeah. I know about that kind of dog. But yeah, one of the tricks we've had to use over the years, and I mean it that way, I would rather it not be throwing a bird into the water and to get our dogs in for the first time to actually swim. But because at the test, you'll be marked down for that. But if you got no other choice, it's either that or Cheetos. You ever heard of the Cheeto trick?
Cheese balls. Also, liver treat float.
Oh, I'll remember that.
They float. But I think what the biggest thing with most dogs who don't swim is they don't realize they can swim.
Yeah.
And if you gently take them out to swimming depth water, and the way I do with pups that are reluctant to get in the water is I'll take them out to swimming depth and I'll let them face the shore and then swim into shore a couple times. Just a couple of paddles, right?
Yeah.
And then once they're comfortable doing that, then I'll bring them into the water and I'll face them away from shore so that they have to make a U-turn, so to say, to get back to land.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then pretty soon they're pretty comfortable and they realize they can swim. And a lot of dogs can get over it that way without making it traumatic and without using a bird.
Yeah, I love that idea. That strikes me as almost a natural ability, if you want to call it that.
Right.
Well,
it's very gentle.
There you go. Yeah, I like the idea of gentle, and that's how we have happy dogs at the end of the day.
Right.
I'm going to go down one rabbit hole. Tell me a great hunting story. What was one of the highlights of one of your most recent seasons?
Well, we've been lucky that our grandson went hunting with us last year, and he wasn't quite ready to shoot a bird, but he accompanied us, and it was just so gratifying to take our family member, the next generation of potential hunters, and expose them to what we do with the dogs and what happens out there and the camaraderie with our friends that we hunt with. And he realized that it's not just about killing a bird. It's the whole package of enjoying time with the people and the dogs you love.
You know, I'm glad. Now I'm inspired. We got a project starting up very soon around here. A good friend who's got a grandson who needs to learn how to handle a shotgun, and he's kind of leery. Everybody's kind of leery about all of that because he didn't have a very good experience. But did you ever end up handing this kid a gun and letting him shoot something somewhere?
Oh, absolutely, and he's a great shot.
Yeah.
So he's very confident in his ability to do it.
Yeah.
He just turned 18.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of other things happening in his life at the moment, but we exposed him to it, and I saw the joy on his face of like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And so when he gets through these crazy teenage 20s, maybe he'll come back to that thing that he remembers that we showed him.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, switch gears. We're going back. I want to talk to an expert trainer about the highest priority most of us have this summer, and that is steadiness. Getting a dog to hold still long enough for us to at least move in and put the bird in the air. Yeah, we all have a different definition of it. But
well, there's the testing, and then there's the hunting steadiness.
And I'll never forget being shocked when a very well-known, very successful NAVHDA trainer said to me, "Yeah, but in the field after the test, yeah, I let him break." So, but we would like to have that option, you know. So if we want a dog that will hold still longer till we can catch up to it, you know, what do we do to start with? Is it do we let the birds train the dog? Is it an obedience question? Is it two separate paths? How do you train for steadiness?
Well, I think you're onto something with your two separate paths.
Yeah.
So my preferred path is hunting and let the wild birds teach them stuff. But if you have a poor year like we did this year for hunting, and we took our puppies out and they didn't encounter many wild birds, then we have to replicate that in the training field. And that's when I go to flushing a lot of pigeons, hopefully if they'll point pigeons. Sometimes I'll have to use chucker just because a lot of dogs I deal with get kind of sour on pigeons.
Yeah.
They're just not very exciting. So we'll use whatever it takes, chucker or pheasant, even quail if I can find some really nice flying bobwhites. But I really like to let the bird do the schooling if possible. Now there are some dogs who it doesn't always work with, and I don't think there's a magic way to teach steadiness because each dog is so different.
Yeah.
And I've just got a large toolbox after doing this for 20 plus years that I'm able to adapt to each different dog's needs as far as steadiness. I mean, sometimes I use the bow post, and sometimes I use the flank collar, and sometimes there's a lot of different ways to do it. And if you're on the outside looking in and you want to do steadiness over the summer, a great resource is certainly a NAVHDA chapter. And there's a pro trainer or two, and there are people who successfully train their dogs for steadiness at those events. And you can get a feel for what may be right for your dog. But ultimately, the person doing the training is the one who has to figure out what's right for them and their dog.
You know, you do, and I'm getting better at it because I have to write about it every day somewhere. We don't really look analytically at what a dog is doing most of the time, do we?
Well, it's more esoteric, I guess. It's just, there's a lot of things going on rather than just one thing.
Yeah. Good point. But it starts with figuring out what the dog is doing and then kind of speculating after that. Do you,
right. Well, try this or try that.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, make something up.
Yeah. You know,
I'm a great improviser.
Well, you know, I used to be a musician, and I was a really bad improviser, but I did get to play a lot of jazz. People were very tolerant. But, you know, give me an example of that. You know, you've got a dog. It's a client dog. It's one of your young dogs, whatever it is. That dog is just not doing something that you thought it should do at this point in its development? How are you going to, we used to, when you played jazz, you faked it a lot of times. And Thelonious Monk, a great jazz pianist, once said, "There's no wrong notes, just in how you handle them after you play them." But have you ever, stumbled on a wrong note and then had to improvise?
Absolutely. And I think what I've done most recently is when I hit a wall, I take a break.
Yeah.
And take the pressure off if we're not getting anywhere with my 2 or 3 tricks up my sleeve. And if I'm getting a lot of resistance or whatever it is, not interested, whatever, I give us both a break and come back to it after a week. And either they're on lockdown and they get no joy, or I let them have fun doing their fun thing. It just depends on the dog. And usually after a week off, I've had some time to think of something new to try. And they're not so pressured, and they come back at it fresh. And sometimes the old things will work where they weren't working the prior week.
Yeah, I said once, I said it a couple times probably in my book. I said, sometimes you need to give the dog a day off. You're suggesting maybe even more than a day, but sometimes that's all it takes, because they, a couple more synapses start connecting on a young dog or whatever.
It gives them time to think.
Yeah.
And just reset. I always call it the reset.
Yeah.
I'm going to try a reset with this dog because we're just beating our heads against the wall.
You think back, and we've all been to some of these, you look back on some of the gear we use, whether it's Delmer Smith's Wonder Lead or an electric collar or a woe post, like you mentioned. All of those came out of some level of desperation looking for the next solution, didn't they?
Absolutely. Yep.
Speaking of gear, what are some of the training gear choices that you've made that we probably haven't thought about using right or using at all?
I'll tell you, the latest thing that I'm seeing with people is few people, younger people, are using a whistle training their dogs at all, because they rely on their e-collar, right?
Okay.
And so I see young people come to the test. Their dogs never run without an e-collar on. And they come to the test, and there's no way to call their dog. They're yelling at them, right? And, it's 30-mile-an-hour winds, and your dog is 500 yards away, and they cannot hear you. And people aren't whistle training their dogs anymore, which is such an interesting thing to me, because I think my whistle was probably the first gear I owned.
Yeah. I haven't seen, or at least I haven't observed enough to think that it's a problem, but you're absolutely right. At some point, even if you are allowed to have a collar on your dog because you're, out there hunting in South Dakota, the battery goes dead. Right.
Or you forget the collar. You forget the collar, you forget the remote, you lose the remote, it breaks, whatever. Yep.
Yeah. You'd think I was telling you all those stories before we started recording. But by the way, if you ever do lose stuff like that, here I bought a roll of fluorescent yellow duct tape, and I wrap all of those things in fluorescent yellow duct tape. Makes them a lot easier to find when you drop them on the ground.
Right. Correct.
Do you use treats very often in your praise lexicon?
Not a lot. I usually have a bag of treats and it lasts me 2 or 3 months, and I've got a kennel full of dogs.
Wow.
So I use it for obedience.
Okay.
And for a lot of dogs, I use it when I'm teaching recall.
Yeah.
Because I want them to turn around and look at me and like, oh yeah, she's got a treat for me. I'm coming. I'm coming.
Yeah.
But very little.
Instead, what do you use? In
Praise.
the early stages.
Praise. So quiet praise. I remember going to my first Smith seminar, and the silent command system and that quiet. It always has resonated with me. That quiet, calm demeanor from the handler, touching the dog calmly, quietly. Man, those dogs just eat it up.
Why do you think that is? But you're absolutely right. And funny thing is, all those Smith family people, they're kind of like that.
Yes. They're quiet and calm.
Yeah, they are. I know my blood pressure goes down when I'm talking with Ronnie. So, and Rick's the same way.
Right.
But why is that? Why do you think that's superior to the opposite, which is we see it all the time? Sometimes it works too, and that's the funny part. The rah-rah cheerleader, handler, trainer, who thinks a dog really wants to get excited when they're done with their job.
Yeah. I think there's room for both methods. I'm just more of a quiet, calm person. So, if I get a dog to swim, I'm like, yeah, excited. But in my field work, I want that calm, thoughtful dog, not the yeah dog.
I had a great trainer say to me once, and you alluded to it earlier, I want a dog that is 2 wheels off the rail, not all 4 wheels. So, so how do you do that? And that sounds like a great way to do it. Keep them kind of down, but not all the way down, or kind of up, but not all the way up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ruth Weiss, NAVHDA judge, NAVHDA trainer, avid wild bird hunter, and all around good person. What would you leave us with when it comes to hunting? We're out there chasing wild birds somewhere, whether it's down in Arizona or North Dakota. Of all the things you've seen and done and probably regretted or probably been glad you did, what kind of advice would you give us when we go out with our dog after wild birds?
Just remember that on any given day, the people may have what they perceive as a bad day. They didn't find birds, they missed birds, their dogs broke, whatever happened during the day. Just remember that it was the best day your dog ever had. And they don't care that they broke, that they've dropped birds, that you didn't find enough birds or whatever. They had the best day they could have. And we need to remember that each day in the field with our dogs is the best day.
I couldn't say it better, so I won't. What a great way to end a wonderful discussion. We'll do this again. Maybe next time it'll be in person somewhere. But in the meanwhile, Ruth Weiss, always great talking with you. I learn so much every time we get together. Thanks so much for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
It was my pleasure.
And mine as well. So fun to talk and enjoyed every minute of it. Hey, we've got more to come after the break, including our Fix It segment, which is all about the one time when some form of praise may not be the right idea. And then our Fur Feathers Friends sweepstakes, word of the week, lots of prizes, including a 4-pack of Pointer shotguns. Coming up after this word from Sage and Breaker, just got word from Fred Bohm that the range bags are back in stock. Yeah, we're offering one in our Fur Feathers Friends sweepstakes, so pay attention to that. So also for all their gun cleaning and care, I call them consumables. They're cleaning, lubricating, and protecting spray, the bore cleaning solvent, firearms grease. They're all ready for you to order and get in your hands well before the season starts, or maybe you haven't quite done a good maintenance job yet, and it's time for you to pull those guns out of the safe and start getting them ready right now. Sign up for the mailing list and you would have heard about the range bag availability again already. Go to sageandbreaker.com, sageandbreaker.com. And if you want to see what you've been missing in the field, well, it works for me. That's those light pipes from HiVizSights.com. HIVIZ sights.com. These are a patented interlocking system. You can change out the colors depending on the weather conditions, for example, that help your inner eye and your real eyes make, hey, I made a joke, make the connection literally between your shotgun muzzle and the flying target. I'm a big believer. Watch the video. You'll see why. Go to HiVizSights.com. Apropos of our discussion with Ruth Weiss, the Fix It segment this week is all about, well, maybe the one and only time when you really don't want to praise up your dog. And I'll tell you why. Because we make it a habit and it becomes something other than just, good boy. Most of us teach that as part of a string of other commands. For example, your dog brings back the bird. You take it and say, good boy, which may as well be, all right, or go hunt, or go play, or whatever. Praise should never be the release. You should have a new command or something else in the way of words that allow your dog to kind of loosen up and goof off. Good boy ends up losing its currency as praise, and it also bungles up the rest of your commands and the obedience that is required to follow those commands. So come up with another word, another release command, if you want to call it that. Say good boy or good dog or whatever you use, just for the compliance or the perfect execution of the command that you asked him to execute. Just saying, might be worth a thought. Try it sometime. Hey, time for our Fur Feathers Friends Word of the Week. That's how you are eligible for two things. First off, that 4-pack of Pointer shotguns. And second, the May monthly prize of HiViz Sight and a Sage and Breaker range bag. That's over $200 in gear. All you got to do is go to furfeathersfriends.com. Tell me who you're hunting with. Maybe include a picture. Fill out the Word of the Week portion of the entry form, and you're eligible for both the monthly prize and that 4-pack of pointers. Here's the Word of the Week for this week. Spelling doesn't count, but if you get it, all the better. Langhar. Look it up. Langhar. Good luck to you. That portion of the program brought to you by PointerShotguns.com. Yeah, the new hard copy of the catalog is out right now, and boy, is it beautiful. You know, as an old publisher from way back, I just love holding a publication in my hand. From the smell to the touch, they got that really high-quality cover paper that's got texture to it. And then, of course, all the guns inside. Not only the shotguns from Pointer, but there are also other guns as well offered up by Legacy Sports, the parent company. So no matter what you're interested in, including over and unders under $4.99, go to PointerShotguns.com and order your own copy of the 2025 catalog, second edition. That's PointerShotguns.com. Well, thank you, Ruth Weiss. Always great to talk with you in the field or right here in the mainland studios. Appreciate all your insights. Have a great season. Hope everybody stays healthy and enjoy the hunting season too, Ruth. Thank you all for listening. Please tell one person if you enjoyed the program. And if you will, please leave a review or a rating at Apple Podcasts. Of course, this couldn't happen without our sponsors. Thank you to Roughland Dog Kennels, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock Choke Tubes, Pointer Shotguns, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, and High Viz Shooting Systems. If you want to get the bi-weekly newsletter full of information and videos quite often, go to findbirdhuntingspots.com and sign up today. Appreciate your listening. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation Podcast.